Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Fifth Dimension live video podcast. I have to keep remembering I'm not doing radio anymore. This is a live video podcast. I have to keep remembering myself to do that. Yes, live video podcast with Mr. Dave Schumacher, my partner for the Fifth Dimension podcast. Dave, what's up? We got a great show tonight. We got a really good special guest. I'm excited. We'll be
Yep,
announcing
really
him in a
excited.
minute.
Glad to be back and hello everybody. So yeah, here we go. Number
Yeah,
11.
number 11. All right. Well, without further ado, I'm really excited to have this guest on our show. He's a good friend of mine. I've known him for a few years. We work with other fellow colleagues together. Um, with who I consider a mentor of mine, good friend of mine, also Miss Virginia Centrello, psychic medium who works on his team. He's got a book out called Chasing Shadows. He's an author of that. It's a really, really good book. I recommend it. We'll be sharing how you can get that information later on the show. He's a retired state police officer. He is the director of the Pennsylvania Paranormal Association in Pennsylvania, and he's now a private investigator. So he's been featured on many paranormal TV shows, especially a couple of the new ones. Many of you might be familiar with him on The Haunted. They've aired that, I think, on Discovery Channel, Animal Planet, and other networks. He's also part of Paranormal 911 and Haunted Hospitals. So without further ado, we have Mr. Mark Kais. I'd like to welcome our special guest. Mark, thanks for coming to do our show.
Hey guys, it's great to be here and thank you for the invite.
Yeah, no, thank you. So, um, I mean, where do I begin? I mean, Mark, we've been everywhere. We've done events together. With your background and the cases that we've talked about together. We've had phone conversations about current cases and ideas and projects and stuff. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you're currently doing?
Yeah, well, as you just mentioned, I'm a retired state trooper out of Pennsylvania. I retired in August, and I was a detective for many years. And luckily, my last 2 years, I was asked to also be our troop's public information officer, which means I worked with the media and also doing a lot of lectures and training classes for the public. So it was just a fantastic way to go into retirement dealing with the nicer, kinder side of police work. That was fantastic. And I started my own private investigator business shortly after retiring, and it's fantastic because I kind of get to do the same work without having to do all the paperwork and arrest work that comes with that. So it takes a lot of the stress off. But
Sure.
I started the Pennsylvania Paranormal Association with my wife, Lauren, back in 2008. We were with a local team for about 2 years prior to doing that. And one thing that they were very good at was a technical investigation. And something I found out was there was a lot of people that were legitimately really scared to be living with a haunting. So what I wanted to do, which was a little different than that team, was try to come up with resources to resolve hauntings. And I had enough experience prior to getting into any teams working with a few psychic mediums, and they claimed they were able to communicate with ghosts and release them. So I started our own team, like I said, with my wife, and our goal was to put the resources together to be able to identify who was haunting a location, and then to use resources such as a psychic medium to be able to bring that haunting to an end. And here we are, 11 years later, and we've had great success doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I commend you guys for the way you guys conduct your work, and you guys are just extremely professional how you handle yourself. That's number one. Despite being on a few TV shows, but aside from the shows and stuff, I really appreciate the way you guys handle yourselves out in the field. Because many people look up to you guys and the way you handle your work, and I know that's one of the biggest questions I know Dave is going to bring up because he's interested in how you guys incorporate psychic mediums into your investigations. So I'll let Dave ask the question. I'll let him have that first crack at that.
Well, you pretty much asked it, but yeah, I'm just interested in how do you use psychic mediums in your investigations, what the procedure is, and how that is perceived not only by the clients but your other team members.
Yeah, so Matt, already gave the name of our psychic medium, Virginia Centrillo, and she's out of Queens, New York. She travels to Pennsylvania with us on cases everywhere. And when we first started using psychics, it was kind of a mixed review by some of our members because we had some that were very scientific based, and we had a very high ratio of police officers on our team when we first started. We had 2 guys from the FBI, 3 state troopers, 2 municipal cops, and then there were a couple of people from other professional occupations. But these guys were all very objective in the way they did their work. And again, it was kind of a mixed review when we decided to bring a psychic in. So we started working with a medium who agreed to allow us to study her and her work. And we wanted to see if we brought her in, could she accurately identify what type of activity the clients were reporting? Could she give us historical information on the location? Could she give us correct names of who may be haunting the place? Could we then research those names and put those names at the property? So, it took a little while. We went through a couple mediums. We found one that was a good fit. That was Virginia. And one of the first things we wanted to do was get her to a house or a business without giving her any information at all. So we'd call and say, hey, you available for a case Friday, Saturday night? She'd say yes. We'd give her an address to go to away from wherever we were going. And then we'd pick her up or have her follow us to the house. And that way we knew she had absolutely no information on anything. And she actually insisted on that. She always tells us and the clients that if she has information, even from them when she gets there, then she isn't sure if she's creating stuff based on the information she knows or if she's getting authentic psychic information coming in. So she didn't want any information. So once we got her to the house, the very first thing we did was have her do a walkthrough without any equipment set up anywhere. We wanted the house, as clean as possible. And we have her do a walkthrough. And again, I asked her to tell us who she's feeling is haunting the place, what type of activity the clients are reporting or experiencing in which part of the house. If she has any names, can she give us names of who might be there? And eventually, after the investigation, we would turn the location over to her and assist her in any way she wanted to help resolve the case, whether it was, releasing a ghost that was stuck or, a physical type of cleansing that she might be doing. So, after doing that for about a year of actually taking her somewhere else, her information was just so dead on accurate that we just said, all right, you've more than impressed us. Just meet us right at the location. So right before she has to leave her house, right before a case, we will now give her an address to go to, but we kind of follow up with the clients and say, listen, we did give her your address. Anything she could find on the internet, disregard that information. She'll probably get it anyway, but we're looking for very intimate, particular details of what's going on inside the house that relates directly with you and a haunting. Let's look at that information and see if it matches, what you're reporting. And it's been fantastic.
Okay. Interesting. Great. Thanks.
Yeah. And we also work with her that way as well because we get yelled at if we give her any information. So
absolutely,
I know not to get in the way of her yelling at us, and I'm like, okay, go do your thing. We won't tell you nothing.
And she'll do that with clients too. If a client starts feeding her information based on something she says, she shuts them right down and says, "Don't tell me anything. I'm going to give you the info."
Yeah. As a matter of fact, that's actually one of the ways that Virginia and our team met was my wife and I had an attachment at our home, quite a few years ago, and we reached out to a lot of people, and we couldn't get somebody in here to help right away. And Kim Russo, we ran into Kim Russo before she became a big thing on TV, and she was good friends with Virginia. And she said, "Well, I know somebody in the area that can get to you before I can," and that's how we came across Virginia. And she's funny because she's like, "Well, you've kind of adopted me now because we've worked with her on a couple of cases, and I always felt bad taking her away from Mark's group, but you know, she just immediately became a family member of ours just because of her helping us. And really appreciate the way she works because, like Mark said, the things she comes up with is just really, really amazing. Like, and you don't need to tell her anything, and the things she get, it just makes you really sit there and go, "How is she getting this information?" It really amazes me.
Yeah, and one thing that she always kind of got a little upset on some cases, if she wasn't getting information, she was working so hard to try to get that for us that she was frustrating herself. And I literally had to tell her, relax. There's obviously a reason that you're not getting this information. That's an integral part of the investigation we're doing here. Sit back. Let's see how it unfolds. We're going to figure out why you're not getting it. And 9 times out of 10, it ended up being that, somebody that was there was, blocking her from the other side for whatever reason.
Yeah,
And, after a couple hours there, the information started to unfold. But
right.
yeah, like you said, the information she gets, the amount of accuracy is just incredible. First, last names, occupations, manner of death, you name it. She comes up with the info for us.
I call her the human spirit box. Yeah. So yeah, but all right. So you guys have you've had a couple of other police officers on your team. One of the questions I have for you, Mark, is which I'm sure you get this a lot. Um when you first started getting into the paranormal as a police officer, did your department maybe like frown upon you getting involved in the paranormal, or were they fully supportive, or like how is the reaction of the department and the town and stuff like that?
I think it was kind of a mixed bag, just like you get in the general public. You have some people who are complete non-believers. You have other people who are absolute believers. Believe it or not, there's a lot of people who are very psychically open in various ways in all kinds of police departments. They don't announce that usually, but they're there.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a mixed bag. So those non-believers, they kind of, give a little jab here and there. Cops are a tough crowd, and we joke around with each other a lot, make fun of each other a lot, and we're under such stressful situations sometimes that it's a way to release that stress. So, we poke each other, and of course, I'm into the ghost stuff, so you're going to get a little back from that. Which, if I didn't, I feel a little offended, but. The part that kind of surprised me was the overwhelming amount of interest people had, all the way up to a whole troop commander. That's in Pennsylvania. That would be a captain level who has a headquarters and commands about 4 stations. So the captain would call me in his office every now and then and say, "What do you got for me? What's going on? I'm interested to hear what kind of stories you have." So
Right.
that led even right to some staff out of our Harrisburg state headquarters. There's some people interested in the paranormal there, and they would always touch base with me and ask some stories, some experiences that I've had. I've had
Right.
guys come to me on the job who have had experiences, or family members who have experiences at home. They don't know where to go to. They trust me, and they know that I'd give them an honest opinion. So we've taken our team in and helped them out.
Right, right. I was just gonna say that's my next question. Have you gotten a lot of cases through the job, over the years?
Not so much through the job. We've had a few. One of our very first cases as the PPA was through the job. In fact, I was with the other team, and it was really an interesting story that my wife had gone to a tarot card reader, which neither of us had ever done, but she wanted to kind of test this girl out. And one of the things this woman had come up with was that there was this house waiting for us to be investigated. And she said, my wife already said that we were with the team. So she said, "I know you're with the team, but don't take them, go yourselves. Or if you're thinking about, starting your own team, go do it yourself." And my wife wasn't aware of this, but I had just been approached by this woman at work saying, "Hey, I know you do this. We have this old family homestead.
Mm.
We'd like you to come in and check it out. We have a lot of crazy stuff going on." So our very first case with this new team we put together was actually through our job. But occasionally we do get some through work.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say because like I'm sure like there's probably like tons of other cops that like get weird calls and um like break-ins with like windows that are open, and they think somebody broke in, and it may not necessarily be evidence of a break-in. I mean, there is, because the window is open in a building or in a house, or something to that extent. But sometimes you don't find evidence or traces of people, and you get a call and say, this could be something paranormal and not something of an actual human break-in.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised how many times that happens. That
Yeah.
over the course of 25 years, I've heard a lot of stories of a lot of strange things that guys and girls have gone out to investigate different disturbances and whatnot, and uh, they find some pretty weird activity when they get there, but
Yeah.
not a human action going on.
Right.
Yeah, it's always fun
Yeah.
to see the reaction of them as well. I remember in Milton, Wisconsin, we had a location where the people called the police because they turned the lights off, they left, they locked up, and about 2 hours later, I guess they drove by this location again and saw a light on the second floor. So they called the police. The police showed up. They went up there, turned the light off, looked around, nothing, came back out. They locked the place back up. And as they're sitting there talking, the light came back on. And of course, this place had a reputation for being haunted. And the owner of the location is like, well, are you going to go back up there and check it again and turn that light off? And of course, the officer's like, oh, heck no, you can take care of it this time.
Yeah, right. Like, hell no, I ain't going up there.
Yeah. Nope.
Yep. So I got this the story I'll share with you guys. There were two troopers involved in an incident, kind of out in a very wooded area. It's a kind of like forest land where they worked out of. And I'm involved with the new show you mentioned there, Paranormal 911, and I was trying to get them to come and tell their story, and they just wouldn't do it. So I'm going to share it here with you guys.
Oh, cool.
Neither of them had any idea the other one was having any kind of experiences, but I was approached one day by one of these guys and says, hey, I got a story to tell you from several years earlier. But he was called to, I guess it was like an intruder alarm. And with that, alarm companies usually have a contact person that they'll call. So we found out this was an old rest stop, I guess, for like a carriage stop for travelers. And this place was converted into a summer home for a family out of New York City. And this area was maybe only an hour and a half, 2 hours from the city. So they had a caretaker, but this family came out all summer long. So our trooper responds and meets with this caretaker, and the caretaker says, I want to point out this issue that I found. And there was a big wraparound porch on the front of this building and in the side of the building. So they observed a book was thrown through the window, but from inside out. And the caretaker said, I checked, all the doors are locked, all the windows are locked. I don't know who could have been in there. There's no way they could have gotten in. Nothing's broken into. But the book was thrown through the window from the inside. And the glass was all on the outside porch. So he unlocks the door, goes inside with the trooper. The trooper does a search of the building to see if anybody's in there. Goes up to the second floor, walks into one of the rooms, and said it felt like an ocean wave went right through him. He got instantly chilled right to the bone. And he said, I turned around and got the heck out of there. He said, I don't know what it was, but it scared the daylights out of me. And that was it. Done. Place was empty. He got out of there. Never wanted to go back again. So he's riding with another guy on a midnight shift about 2 months later. And this guy says, listen, I got to tell somebody this story. He goes, I just got dispatched to this burglar alarm. And I go down, I meet this caretaker, same exact building. No broken glass this time, but same exact building. He said, guy let me in. I went through the front door. He goes, almost immediately, it felt like somebody ran right through me. He goes, scared the life out of me. So I don't know what's more odd, two guys going down and having the same experience, or the guy that he decides to tell 2 months later is the same guy who had the experience that he did. So it was just an amazing story to me. But, that's just an example of one guy who came to me with a great story to tell.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty cool. To have the same experience, but from two different people. What I love about these stories and these eyewitnesses is not only are they great stories, that they're telling, but these are guys with credible backgrounds, with you know, a good background with the police department, you know, or being a straight, state trooper, and you can't take that away from them because their reputation and their job is kind of on the line when they kind of share these stories with people because they're not sure, like we talked about before, how people are going to respond to them explaining their experiences to them.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I like about having even police on our team. And I mean, we have professionals from all different backgrounds, but when we started, we wanted to make sure we had all professionals and try to, take our team to a level where people would look at them and say, well, they seem like intelligent people based on their occupations. I can't see them making stuff up. Hopefully they would, believe anything that we were reporting to them.
Right.
So when you're looking at some of these reports by police officers and even paramedics, EMTs, firemen, especially the police officers, because their word is their occupation. If they are lying on incidents and reports in court, that could mean their whole career is over. And I mean, look what happens. You get one dirty cop and they're done. So, they're supposed to be, very, very credible people. So when they're reporting stuff like this to me, I kind of take a little bit more notice.
Sure.
So that brings up an interesting question then. When they have a call like that, an experience like that, how detailed and how many or how truthful are they when they report it and when they write it up in the report?
I've never asked that particular question. I can't imagine they put anything in there about feeling someone go through them. I was probably just very factual as far as they responded, found a broken window, a book, everything was secure, there's no suspects, and kind of left it at that. I haven't actually asked that question, but I can't see anybody putting anything that they thought might have been paranormal in there. I know there are cases out there where people have gone to car accidents and heard some strange things, drawing their attention to a different area where they end up finding a victim. And I believe they have reported that in the police report that they don't know where the voices came from to direct them over there. But, they had put it in there that I heard a voice calling me in this direction, went over, found this person.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah. We have a chat going right now. I want to just give a quick shout out to our listeners in the chat room. We have Katie in there, and we have Mr. Mike Nichols, who's becoming an avid listener of our show. I want to say hello to them. Mike has a question I think is kind of actually referring to what we just talked about. Would a police officer actually write that up in his official report?
Yeah, and again, I think that's what we just kind of talked about. I doubt they're going to go that depth into actually stating they feel it was a paranormal occurrence. So my guess is, and I can't speak for them, but my guess is that they would probably just state the facts of what they observed physically, such as I heard a voice calling me in a direction, ended up finding this person, but there was nobody there, and the person was unconscious. So they probably just stuck to the facts and left the crazy stuff out.
But the fact that there's a record of it at all that backs up what happened, at least there was an accident or there was a call for a potential break-in or, whatever, at least there's a record of it. So there's some evidence that somebody called somebody because there was something strange going on. That's important because a lot of times, you get pushback from skeptics and cynics saying, it's all anecdotal evidence and we don't have any proof that that actually occurred. But to me, at least that gives you a little bit of something to go on, that there's an official record that something happened and somebody was concerned enough to call it in or had an experience when they showed up on the scene.
Yeah, in fact, the case where the book went through the window that actually triggered a break-in alarm, the window was shattered, which set off the alarm, which triggered the response of the caretaker and the state police. So they arrived there and found the book tossed through a window and glass out there. So that would be documented as well, along with the place being totally secure and not broken into. So, I think that's up to other people reading it, probably some supervisors saying, well, what happened here? Did a ghost do it? Or did somebody maybe get in and out without, actually breaking something? They were able to, pop a door open and it just went. Who knows?
Did anybody take in account as to what type of book it was? Like, what was the title and what was it? What was the book was actually about?
I think it was called Chasing Shadows with Mark.
Good plug. Absolutely. That's the book that it was. No, they I don't recall talking to him specifically about that, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was just saying it would be interesting because I'm not like really into coincidence anymore because I just had so many things happen where I'm just like, it's not a coincidence to me anymore. Like, I think things happen for a reason, and we don't know what those reasons are, but sometimes they're just there, just because they're there, and it happens because that's your experience. That was for you to experience. But I look at like little details like that because there could be like a meaning to it. There could be a reason that happened. There could have been something more to it than just a book being thrown out the window. That's how I
And
look
you
at
think as a detective, that would have been a good question to ask at the time, but and I may have. That was several years
Yeah,
ago, so
yeah,
I don't remember talking about it specifically. He may have told me, but
right,
yeah, I don't
yeah,
recall that info.
yeah. I missed my calling years ago. I should have been a detective. Wow.
Yeah, I always said, well, police work in general, it's the best job in the world and it's the worst job in the world. It just depends on the day.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. But speaking of books, yeah, let's touch a little bit on that. Mark has a book out called Chasing Shadows. I believe there's many ways that you can purchase the book, which Mark will share with our viewers and listeners. Um, for those who are joining us late, real quick, we're talking with the author of Chasing Shadows. He's a retired police state officer. He's the director of the Pennsylvania Paranormal Association, the PPA, who's been featured on many paranormal TV shows on The Haunted and Animal Planet, Discovery Channel, I believe, and quite a few other shows, especially the new ones that are out now. Mark's been featured on Paranormal 911 and Haunted Hospitals, and he's involved in lots of other projects. And so, yeah, and one of the biggest projects of his life has been his book, Chasing Shadows. Why don't we give a spoiler to our listeners and viewers? What's Chasing Shadows about?
Yeah, so it's a great book. I read it. I wrote it too.
Well, I hope so.
So one of the things I found doing a lot of lectures is what people came up with a lot of very similar questions at each of the lectures we were going to. And I started out in this field as what I call an optimistic skeptic. I really wanted to believe all this stuff was real. I wanted to believe hauntings were real, psychic ability was real, but something was holding me back. I just couldn't really buy into it. I read about it, I saw it on TV, but the bottom line is people are trying to sell books. They're trying to, sell ratings. So I got to a point where I just had such an interest. I told my wife I want to just go find out for myself, and I had to put myself out there into these haunted locations and work with psychic mediums to just try to understand if any of it was real. And I talked to enough people who claimed that they had hauntings. They seemed that they were very intelligent, very sincere about it. So with that, I got involved, and after years of having no experiences, I started finally having a few, and I got to a point where I believed in paranormal activity, but was a ghost doing it? I wasn't really sure yet. So, I just kept going and going. I think that people get involved in this field once they have a really good experience. It's almost addictive. You want more of it. You want to understand, how is that possible? How can something slide across the table by itself? And it's few and far between when that happens. So, you got to put some time and effort into trying to document this stuff. So I had the opportunity where a lot of people didn't, to be able to go out and physically investigate and work with psychic mediums. I tried to bring my police training into it and took a very, very objective look at both sides, the pros, the cons, skepticism, the objective, look at all of it, the clients, the psychics, the physical evidence, and, ultimately came to a conclusion of my own. So the book kind of takes people through that transition of me starting out as a skeptic and going through years of certain experiences and different things that happened to me and things I saw and people I talked to. And there's a little bit about when we got involved with the haunted that started out on Animal Planet. And, when they called it like Animal Planet, what the heck does that have to do with hauntings? But, they made the transition into how animals were targeted by hauntings as well. So it was popular. They were jumping on the bandwagon, and they agreed that they would show the resolutions for us after a brief discussion of the first two that come out where they didn't show that. But we got them on board to make sure they were showing resolutions as a huge part of the work we were doing. So, I talk a little bit about the reality of TV. I talk about I have a psychology background, and one of the things I do is work with people because a lot of these people are really stressed out and can't understand what's going on. They have no coping skills. Some of them are psychically open themselves. They just don't realize it, and they need some assistance. So we take a look at the psychological side of hauntings too. And I also do that with investigators, and they have psychological responses to things that go on. And I put it all in the book so people could take a look at it from a guy who I think is kind of like in the middle of everybody else. I kind of want to believe it's real. It looks pretty cool, but is it? So I went and did it, and came up with my own conclusions.
Well, congratulations on a book. That's a big deal. Takes a lot of time and effort to do that. So that's great. You mentioned that you came to a conclusion. So you want to share with us what that conclusion is? What are you thinking at this stage of your investigation and career in the paranormal?
Well, I will say probably maybe a good 5-6 years into it, I still wasn't sure if I believed in ghosts. I believed in the possibility. I was, absolutely set in my mind that paranormal activity was occurring. I've seen too much of it. Then working with Virginia Centrillo, again, she was just so accurate with historical information and physical events that I had no reason to discount things like I'm speaking to a ghost. This is what they're telling me. I've grown to know her enough. It's been 10 years I've worked with her now. So, I wholeheartedly believe in what she says, but putting that together with what she says, plus my experiences that occur with me as she's explaining stuff, absolutely. Now I've seen too much. It's too overwhelming. And one thing that I actually talk a little bit about in the book is looking at it almost as going to court. Is there enough evidence to present this as a case, and could it get through a court? And one thing that I found, if you look at this even with a little bit of common sense, there's a lot of very intelligent people starting to look into this. There's a lot of scientists starting to look into this. Mm-hmm. There's thousands of groups, just in our country alone. You add the rest of the world, thousands and thousands of groups out there. And, some of the evidence isn't that great, but some of it's fantastic. And with all these people looking into stuff, and as far as we've evolved and as well educated as we are now, if there wasn't something going on, it should be going away. And what it's doing is growing. And how long have paranormal television shows been on? The interest is still there. Spiritualism is kind of coming into it. So, I'd have to conclude for myself anyway. And I tell people, make up your own mind. But, I've just experienced too much, talked to too many people, too much evidence out there to discount it.
Yeah. Great. Quick follow-up question. So you say, you look at what people would take as evidence in court, so maybe beyond reasonable doubt. How do you think that differs from convincing the scientific community? Because I'm with you. I think there's something going on, and there's a lot of evidence to point a certain way, but the scientific community has a whole different standard. So do you differentiate between, what would be admissible as evidence and, beyond reasonable doubt in court versus scientific proof to the community?
Scientists are a very tough group themselves. Scientists, especially when you're dealing with theoretical physics, unified physics, theoretical physicists, they have a hard time even convincing the physics community of their own work. So bringing somebody from the outside in who's talking about ghosts.
Good point, Mark. Good point. They can't agree on anything in their own field.
Yeah, there's no convincing a lot of really super scientific people. But when you start looking into the quantum world and unified physics, theoretical physics, they are starting to say that there is something non-physical, something from a non-locality here that is affecting the physical world here. So I think it's just a matter of time before they start kind of bending in that direction, and then you'll see like possibilities of why psychics can obtain information out of certain objects, and the possibility that, okay, maybe there is an energy that a ghost consists of. Right now, there's theories in physics of a holographic universe where everything that happens is, saved on the surface of a proton, and every single proton shares the whole of the universe. We're full of protons in us. So if you took one proton and knew how to extract the info, the information of the universe is there. And this is coming from physics. So that would explain how psychic mediums can manipulate objects or go into a location and read information off of it. So they're starting to go in that direction. But my guess is it would probably be easier to go through a court hearing and have it there than having the scientific community in some respect agree that, you have a ghost in a house.
Yeah, it's interesting to bring up the holographic universe. I think I've read that book a couple years ago by Brian Greene on the holographic universe, and it brings up some really good potential conceptual and hypothetical ideas to explain the paranormal. So interesting stuff.
Yeah, I love it. And I think it's just a matter of time. You're going to find a crossover by some people between the two. I think this has started to happen with a lot of police officers because they are investigators. They like to investigate, and a lot of police like history as well, and that ties into the paranormal. So you're kind of seeing a lot of police now that are merging into investigating, and I think you're going to start seeing some science people kind of going that way too, just out of pure interest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. Um, I just want to take a moment, guys, if you don't mind, just let our listeners and viewers know ways that you can contact us during the show. If you have a question, if you're listening, please subscribe to our show on our YouTube channel. There's a little bell in the top right corner. If you go to our YouTube channel, you can follow a chat room that's going on live right now. If you don't want to call in, you can go there and just ask questions in the chat. It's absolutely free. You just need a Gmail or YouTube account. You can hit us up on our email. Hate mail goes to fifth dimension radio show at gmail.com. We also have a Facebook page. You can message us there privately if you wish. If you don't want your voice heard over the air, I can understand. But yeah, there's many ways you can contact us during the show. Anybody's got questions for our guest, Mr. Mark Ties, who's been a great flow of information on our show so far. We're having a lot of fun. Well, we're gonna get into some fun. Mark, what are some of the cases that you've had recently or over the years that stand out for you the most?
I get asked that a lot, and I could hands down say the number one case that stands out for me, and actually it was highlighted on The Haunted back in 2008, was a house in Upper Darby, which is just outside of Philadelphia. And the reports that the family was claiming to have going on there were so extreme that I thought they were kind of exaggerating on what was going on in the house for whatever reason. And I did a phone interview with them before we went, and they were not quite what I expected when I spoke with them. Very intelligent business professionals, and they seemed very sincere, again, about everything they were saying. But a lot of the reports were normal stuff. They were seeing shadows, shadow figures. One thing that I find kind of interesting with the movie It That's Out, they had a balloon that seemed to be walked around the house. They said even up the stairs, came back down the stairs behind their TV. Freaked them out a little bit. Doors opening and closing. They heard footsteps, toys turning on by themselves. But they were reporting some other stuff that was a little bit extreme for me. They'd go to bed and come down in the morning, and they had very heavy metal dining room table chairs stacked on top of the table with napkins placed on the chairs. Now, if they had told me the chairs were pulled out or knocked over on the floor, I could understand that. But this was very precise movement by an object. So I wasn't really sure about that. One of the other things was they claimed that they had I think it was just a couple-month-old baby in the crib in the master bedroom. The rest of the kids went to school. It was just mom and dad that was home. They went upstairs to check on the baby. The baby's not in the crib. So, of course, they panic and start looking around. The baby's asleep on a bed 2 bedrooms down the hallway. So, again, I'm like, wow, that's kind of out there. I'm not sure about that one, but that's what they were claiming. So this case had me so intrigued. I'm like, part of me wants to go and document this if it's going on, but the other half wants to go and just debunk the crap out of this place because it was so extreme. And they were saying this is almost daily that this was going on. So set up a date. We went down there, and we had Virginia with us. What we like to do when we can is get everybody out of the house when we start the investigation. And in this particular case, we wanted to get everybody out of the house for about an hour before we even started. We set up all our equipment, left for an hour because they said they'd quite often leave the house, come home, and it'd just be in disarray, things thrown all over the place. Even like you see in some movies, the refrigerator would be open and food all over the kitchen floor. So I'm like, we got to try to get something when we go. So we went to dinner. Ghost is hungry, needed some dishes. So we left. Came back in an hour, place was spotless, didn't look like anything moved. I was a little bummed out. But when we went back and reviewed everything over the course of that hour, it sounded like a circus in this house. There was so much noise. It sounded like somebody stomping up and down their stairs, opening dresser drawers, knocking things over, toys turning on. So we had all that activity while we were gone. The doors were all on camera, so we know nobody was in or out of there, and everything was locked up tight. So we started our investigation. We actually saw in our video monitors door opening and shutting several times, shadow come into a room and take off, toys turning on by themselves, quarters being thrown. That was one of their big reports. They always have quarters thrown all over the house. They don't know where they're coming from, just quarters. So we saw that. We set up another night to go back, and we set up a camera down in the basement where they claimed they had some wine popping off a shelf, smashing on the floor. Virginia wanted to try something. She played a prayer over and over on a loop in the basement. And she happened to be down there by herself for a minute, just speaking, and our camera caught a quarter just dropping out of the ceiling. And it was basically, just the wood. There was no insulation, nothing there. So she called us down. Myself and Paul, another investigator, we tore the ceiling apart. Couldn't find any holes. I went upstairs. There's carpet over it. Couldn't imagine where it came from, but now we know there's nothing there. It's a clean ceiling. Paul wanted to spend a couple minutes by himself down there, and after about 15 minutes, nothing's going on, and he got frustrated. Paul's Polish, so he's like, come on, I'm just a big Polak. I'm not going to do anything to you. Quarter falls right out of the air, right on camera. So we go upstairs. Again, we were witnessing quarters flying across the room. Door opened and shut. I opened it up. 3 quarters across the doorway that we just walked in. So there's something going on with quarters, but nearly everything that they reported to us was going on in this house. We were able to document a lot of it, and it was just an incredible case. We used to work with a police-trained canine, who we also brought with us on our second investigation there. And one thing that was really wild with him, his name is Ben. As Virginia's saying, an energy just went up the stairs. Ben went up the stairs and took a right and slammed right into the wall. Well, this was a double block house, and we went back and asked the owners of the home if that used to be an open hallway. And in fact, it used to be one residence, and it was turned into 2. So for a ghost, that would maybe be a natural route to go up the stairs, take a right down the hallway. The ghost was doing that, but the dog did too, hit the wall, and it was pretty bizarre, but it matched exactly with what Virginia was reporting.
Right. Poor dog.
Interesting.
Yeah. Those quarters were your tit.
Yeah, they must have had a couple $100 worth of quarters in a couple jars they collected over the course of about 2 years. And we could not really find what the connection with quarters was. There was no certain date. I don't know. The only thing I could say is 1 quarter I actually saw very close to me go flying across the room. When I picked it up, it was really warm. Yeah. And I don't know what the connection to that would be either. The other ones were already on the floor. We didn't, pick them up at the time. So that stood out to me, though. I remember how warm it was.
Yeah.
Interesting, because you look at cases like that where you get apportation, basically things appearing out of nowhere, and you start wondering, poltergeist agent, human agent, RSPK, but the people weren't home, you said, at the time you witnessed all this, but there's some gray area when you're looking at hauntings versus poltergeist activity, but was there any indication that there may have been a living agent tied to that case?
Yeah, that's one of the things we had come to suspect. We were never able to prove it, but there was a little turmoil with one of the teens, a boy in the house, and I think he probably would have been the culprit for maybe the baby and the chairs on the table. Can't prove that. I could be 100% wrong, but we're kind of thinking maybe he was manipulating the situation a little bit. But with everybody out of the house, and that's one of the reasons we got everybody out, was to, number one, make sure they weren't physically doing it, but number two, to make sure, it wasn't a kinetic thing going on by one of the victims there.
Be one of the first cases I actually heard of a ghost leaving money. That's nice. At least they paid rent.
Right?
Be one way to fund the field if more of them would do that. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, they didn't have to pay for parking for a couple of years.
Yeah, I always tell the homeowners that we help on investigations. I said, out of all the things that happen, why can't they leave money so they can help pay the rent? I mean, come on.
Absolutely. Do the dishes, something. Help me out here.
Yeah, right.
Chairs on the table don't help much. Yeah, when you were first describing that, a lot of it sounded like it came between, Stephen King's It with the balloon and then the thing with the chairs on the table. It's like, that sounds like the movie Poltergeist.
Yeah, no doubt. One of the things with balloons, and I've had my own brother actually report, he called me up one day reporting some weird activity by a balloon. But some of these balloons are, they're so light and, they essentially ride on air currents. And you might not feel them, but they're still moving through homes. So I can't say the balloon's connected in any way to ghosts there. But, man, when you're already fueled to think you got something going on and you see this balloon moving through your house, that's probably going to freak you out.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
especially if you see a scary clown, snarling at you, around the corner.
That could be a problem.
But, yeah, definitely. All right. Not that we still have a little bit of time in the show, but Mark, how can people get information? Where to get your book? Where's it available? And stuff like that. Maybe you can share with our viewers and listeners how they can purchase your book, Chasing Shadows.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. It's called Chasing Shadows: A Criminal Investigator's Look into the Paranormal. It's available on Amazon. You could get it at rowpub.com. That's the publisher. It's rowepub.com. Barnes and Nobles online, you could get it from, or you could jump on our website, which is just theppa.net, for the Pennsylvania Paranormal Association. And there's a link on there that'll take you to the book as well.
All right, cool. What current events are you getting into? Are you doing it? I mean, I know you're involved with Paranormal 911 and Haunted Hospital. Are there any other projects that you're currently into that you like to share?
Yeah, I'm currently waiting to hear again on Paranormal 911. It's the ratings have been doing extremely well. It's expected to go to season 2. The production company just recently contacted me on that. They're just waiting, hopefully any day now. That'll be going. What I've done for that show, based on my background as a state trooper, plus I was a firefighter, an EMT, and a 911 dispatcher on top of it. So they asked me to participate as one of their commentators during the show to kind of, help move the story along when certain terms come up, like let's just say cold spot, where the general viewing public might not know what that is. They just ask for different theories on what would cause that, or explain it to the audience. So I do a little bit of that in Paranormal 911. I was asked to do some of that, a little bit lesser degree, on haunted hospitals, but haunted hospitals is going to season 2. They're taking cases right now. If somebody's had an experience in a hospital, not as an investigator, but you're visiting a hospital, you work at a hospital, whatever, they're looking for more cases. And if people even want to send me a Facebook message or an email, if you go on our website again, theppa.net, there's a link to my email. I could get you in touch with the directors. And again, just waiting to hear from Paranormal 911. There's a third show that's out there. It's going to be brand new that I've been asked to do some commentary on. I don't know if that's going to go yet or not. That's got to be a a network approval for that one, so we're waiting to hear on that. But can't announce that one yet because I don't know if I'm going to be included in that one just yet.
Nice, nice. Well, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you deserve it. You're one of the good guys, Mark, in the field. You're a hardworking investigator, and all the things that you contribute to the paranormal community as well. And the way you just help people in general. I couldn't, commend a guy just any more than I can with you. So, I mean, I have a much highly respect for you. You know that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And I've never gone looking for any television shows. I've been in different situations that had allowed me to get involved, but I'm very picky on what we'll do. The other shows we've been involved in had given us the opportunity again to show the resolution and that there is help out there for people. And as far as like Paranormal 911, it allowed me to explain in my own terms, my viewpoint on different activity and why things happen. And they have a couple different experts that do the same thing. But, I thought if I could help, give a semi experienced answer, I guess, if you will. I'm not the end all for information here, but we've logged well over 200 resolution cases now, so I've got a little bit of experience behind us, and I always like to try to have, not me, but I like to see the field go to a higher level with everything, more professionalism, and everybody does it for their own reasons. Some people just like to do it for fun. I like to do it for fun sometimes, but my heart is in helping people that are very scared and they want it stopped. So that's where we kind of concentrate. And anytime I get a chance to try to, let people know there's help out there, I like to get out and do it.
Yep. I think that's why we get along so well, because like we have similar interests in the field that way.
Absolutely.
Both our groups kind of have similar style, so I think that's why we got along so good.
Yeah, definitely. We've talked about that before.
Yeah. So we're getting near the end of the show. Mark, just real quick, what's your advice for people from an investigator standpoint and from somebody outside of the paranormal community, or somebody who is just experiencing the paranormal? So give a little of both from the outside of the paranormal, and what advice would you give to an investigator?
Well, I think from somebody from the outside, if they're just viewing something, or if they're a witness to something, or even if you're an investigator, I always went by this just from my police training. Always try to be as objective as you can. Look at what's happening, but then try to pick it apart a little bit, because sometimes your perceptions are not exactly what's going on. And, there's something I call the ghost effect, where maybe somebody does have a very legitimate experience, or it's perceived to be legitimate. At least it makes a profound impact on them. And now they have this implanted in their brain that, okay, my house is haunted, or this place is haunted, whatever. And every little thing after that becomes the ghost did it. So they're jumping right to the conclusion. We just did a case like that last night where this lady was making every single thing that happened, the ghost did it. And in reality, there were a lot of very normal causes. So that's one of the biggest pieces of advice I could give, even for investigators. Even if something, 100% paranormal happens on a case, if anything happens after that, pick it apart. Make sure it's not just something natural. Don't lump it into one big ball of paranormal. Pick it apart. And for new investigators out there, one of the biggest things I like to tell people coming on my team: know how your equipment works in non-haunted locations before you go using it in haunted locations. You got to know how it works when you don't have a ghost, so you know how it works when you do.
Amen to that. So, Dave, any more questions or thoughts before we close the show with Mark?
One quick one. I was looking at your website, and you have somebody that you list that does EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, a therapist there. I thought that was interesting, because we have somebody here in the Northeast Illinois area that we work with that does induced after-death communication, which is kind of an extension of EMDR. So at some point, I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. And then I know you have a psychologist or a therapist on your staff for dealing with people that are having kind of stress and problems with the experiences that are happening. So I'm interested to find out more about how those people perceive what's happening and what you do on the field, because a lot of those times, or those people, they kind of look at it like, it might be a mental illness, it might be misinterpretation, it might be misperception. So any quick comments on that would be appreciated.
Yeah, sometimes it's tough for people to find, psychological assistance with where they're not trying to make it something else. These, especially for kids, a lot of kids are very sensitive to the spiritual world, and some of them have very difficult time coping with that. So they need coping skills sometimes. And uh, when you're looking for a psychologist, a clinical psychologist or somebody that works with kids, one good thing to find is like maybe somebody who does it in a holistic way, because there's a lot of holistic people now becoming psychologists and psychiatrists, and they are very open to the possibility of psychic ability and hauntings and stuff like that. So we were lucky enough to actually have a psychologist call us in for haunting at our business. So we teamed up with her for any kids, especially that were having, stress because of it, coping problems, where they would sit down and understand what they were going through. They weren't going to judge them. They're not going to put them on medication. They're going to give them coping skills to deal with a haunting or psychic abilities. And the other therapist, the EMD therapist, is for extreme cases. She basically works with a lot of military people for post-traumatic stress, but it also applies to people who've gone through an extreme haunting and they just cannot get rid of the post-traumatic stress on their own. She could jump in there and basically do the same thing for them as she would anybody else with post-traumatic stress.
Great. Thanks.
Awesome. All right. Mark, any closing thoughts for yourself before we say our goodbyes?
Well, I just want to thank you guys again for having me on the show. I'll throw one more plug out there for Paranormal 911. Obviously, I've got the background that fits there, so I'm kind of biased to that show. I like it a lot, but what's a little bit different, rather than just having a regular sit-down interview where somebody's rehashing their story and they're just playing it, reenacting it in the background, they're actually giving you a little bit of the call. So you're getting to experience the emergency call that they've actually been dispatched to. These are real calls, real, motorcycle accidents, car accidents, heart attacks, whatever. And emergency responders are having experiences. So you get a little feel of the emergency as well as their supernatural occurrence out there. So check it out. Travel Channel every Monday night at 9:00.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah,
Cool.
it's a real I like the show a lot. I like the other one as well. I like Haunted Hospitals. It's very different, and I love the perspective of it. It's just, I don't know. I enjoy it. I suggest other people, if you like, these shows, go check it out. I like them a lot. So, Mark, I want to thank you again. Thanks for being a guest on our show. I can't thank you enough, and we'll have to do it again sometime, because obviously we only do this like an hour long. These conversations are,
I only got
they
halfway through my list, so yes, we got to have them back.
When you only got
Yeah.
halfway through, it's a good show. So
Yeah,
thrilled to be a
yeah.
part of it. I'm loving it. Anytime you want me back, I'm always happy to come back.
Nice. I
Great.
appreciate it. Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, again, our viewers and our listeners, if you like the show, hate the show, please leave us feedback. It's greatly appreciated. Please leave a comment on our YouTube channel if you like on our episode. Just go to our episode and leave a comment. Subscribe, hit that little bell on the top of the YouTube channel webpage. You can reach out to us on Facebook. Our Gmail is Fifth Dimension Radio Show at gmail.com. You can hit us up there every week. Every other week, we try to get a guest on our show as much as we can. We talk about various topics within the paranormal, not just always ghosts or haunting. We do UFOs, aliens, and mysteries, and cryptozoology, other stuff. So we're always looking for nice entertaining, unique guests that pertain to other subjects of the paranormal. So if you're interested, hit us up. And I don't know, Dave, anything else?
No, I think I'd like to thank Mark for coming on. It was a great interview and really insightful and some good stuff. And I look forward to talking to you again. And good
Same
luck
here.
with the book and all the shows.
Thank you. It was great talking to you guys.
All right. So I want to wish everybody a great weekend. Enjoy The Walking Dead, and don't get eaten by a zombie. All right. Have a good night, guys.